Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the E82 competition car that we're building. You've seen the previous videos. We got the engine bay all done, we got the fuel cell all finished up and in its final position, and now we need to work our way towards the back of the car and start working on the fabrication in the rear. Now we're going to be putting a rear radiator into this car, which we're not going to be doing in this video, but what we are going to be doing is building a nice cover for our quick change. We're going to be mounting a quick change in this car. That way, no matter where we're competing at or whatever track that we're driving at, we can make the appropriate gear changes to make our car as competitive and efficient as possible. Now, in a previous video where we cut the car up, we took a huge section out of the back of the chassis right above the differential, because the quick change we're putting in, whether it's a Winners or it's a Bulldog, they are large units, much larger than a factory diff, and it's actually going to be sticking up a good bit. So most chassis, it ends up making contact with the floor pan. Some guys will just cut out a little section, some guys will leave it open, but what I'm opting to do is just take out that entire rear, and we're going to replate a whole new section. We're going to bead roll it, put some bends in it, make it look really nice, and it'll be effective. So if you come to the back of the car, this is the square that I cut out. I took out this entire section from the factory in an E82 or E92. This isn't flat. This actually comes down to a couple pockets and sits really low. And I'm going to need another 2 to 3 inches or so I can make sure that I clear the quick change. So what I'm wanting to do is just sheet this whole thing. We're going to cut it to the size of the frame rails, probably have it a good 1.5 inches under this frame rail, level with this back support. We'll put a little bend on it here. We'll bead roll it, we'll make it look really nice, it'll be strong. And if there's any lines that we want to run under the car, this will be the perfect spot to do all kinds of bulkheads, mount water pumps, whatever we want to do. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I have this piece of cardboard right here from a water heater that I replaced, and I'm going to get it thrown into the back of the car, and I'm going to go underneath, and I'm just going to trace the perimeter that we're going to need onto this piece of cardboard so we can have our general outline and start cutting it to size. All right, so here's our shape. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the scissors and get this all cut out. Okay, so I cut out a rough template. This is how it's looking so far. This is kind of what I was talking about. It's going to be a little bit lower than the frame rail itself, so it still has some character here. So what I'm going to do is put a bend on here, so this will sit nice and flat, and then bend down and meet right along this line. Okay, so I ended up jacking up that other template a little bit. So I made this one here. This has our little flap I was telling you about, that we can have a nice bend. And this guy fits up right here, right where we want it. So I did a ton of trimming off camera. I figured you guys wouldn't really care to see that. This is the final piece. We have it nice and flush, sits under the frame rail, comes up perfectly level with the bottom of this support here. And we have a nice probably 30-45 degree bend here that meets up right at this nice seam. This gives us just enough room to mount our radiator right here behind it. And I'm happy with how that turned out. So now we need to take this template and we will transfer it over onto our piece of steel here. And we'll get that all cut out so we have this in metal and we can start fine tuning it to get it fitting exactly how we want. So I went ahead and just started tracing this thing out. Now normally in the past, anytime I cut any kind of metal, I always use like an angle grinder or a Sawzall, and it's very annoying and it doesn't make very clean work of it. So my brother let me use his electric shears, and I was a bit skeptical at first, but for thin sheet metal like this, it was amazing, complete game changer. I was able to be quick, efficient, and stay right on my marks to where it really didn't even need much fine tuning when I was done. Okay, so I almost nailed it first try. It needed a little bit of trimming on the back and the sides, but I got it in where I want it. So now what I need to do is take this over to Jack's Fab Shop, bend the end of this so we can get it exactly how we want. So I'm gonna find the angle that we need, and I'm gonna take this sheet over there so we can put a bend in it. And we'll probably bead roll a design while we're there too, just to help stiffen up this piece and give it some character. All right, so I came out here to Jack's Fab Shop so we can bend up the quick change plate. He's got his press brake here, and we have our piece all marked out, so let's go ahead and get it bent up. Well, it turned out good. The only problem is we couldn't get any further on the bead roller, but luckily the battery mount is going to be covering the majority of this. So it's unfortunate, it's not perfect. First time I've ever bead rolled anything. But it'll work. It's acceptable. All right, guys, so we're back from Jack's Fab. There's a lot going on when we're over there. It's just constant madness, tons of machines, all kinds of grinders, and there's just not a good way to film because you guys aren't gonna hear anything. But as you kind of saw, we got the diff cover bent. I got it bead rolled. Now, a couple things on the bead roll in action. One, the throat of the bead roller was too small for us to completely spin the diff cover all the way around, so we could only bead roll maybe 90-ish% of the 2 triangles I was putting in there. The bend worked out really nice. There was no issues there, and I was stressing it for a little bit. We were flipping the dies around, we were trying all kinds of different things, and no matter what we do, we could not get it to bead roll all the way around what we did. But what did work in our favor is the only spots it could not bead roll are the very top innermost portions of the 2 triangles that I did, which is exactly where I'm going to be mounting the battery in this car. So you're not going to see it at all anyways. So to be honest, I contemplated not telling you guys, but I might as well just be transparent. This is obviously a garage build. We've done a lot of them, so you know, you run into things like this. It's just the name of the game, but luckily we're at least able to hide it, so it really won't make a difference at all. But let's grab that piece, let's put it in, and we'll see how it fits and go from there. Oh yeah, like a glove, let's go. It doesn't wobble around. That actually fits perfect. The fitment on this is amazing all the way around. Fantastic. The bend was perfect, right where we want it to be. This thing doesn't wiggle at all. Now here is a close-up of the areas I'm talking about. This little section and this little section we could not get. Like I was saying, the battery tray completely hides the areas we couldn't get. It was not planned. This just happened to work out this way, and I am extremely thankful that it did, because I don't want to remake this. Now, also because the battery is going to be going right over this cover, this is a pretty big piece. I mean, this is, shoot, 2.5 feet all the way across. So while it is still bead rolled and that did add some strength, there is a little bit of flex here. So I think just for security, before I throw a 50-pound battery on there that's just going to be getting tossed around, I'm going to put a couple bars on the underside. I was originally planning on just like running maybe 1 across the middle here, but the whole purpose of this is to get it elevated to clear the diff. So the only way I can brace this and make sure that the quick change doesn't hit is if I go on the left and right side, so we still have room in the middle. So I'm going to pull this piece off, and we'll get a couple pieces in here cut and tacked in place. Alright, so this is the piece that we came up with. It's going to go something just like this, and I'll be able to stitch weld that panel on the underside of it as well. So this will be extremely strong, probably a little overkill, but I don't want that battery sagging around. Okay, so I got the braces in for the battery and the tray that sits here. Now what I need to do is put the tray back on here, outline everywhere it touches around the chassis, because that's where I'm going to be welding. I'm going to grind all of that down, and then we're going to hit it with some weld through primer so everything on the underside of the car is nice and protected from any rust. And then we can go ahead and stitch weld the bottom side of the tray to these support braces and all the way around, and it'll be good to go. Okay, so I have the underside of the car all covered in weld through primer. I got the bottom side of the panel in the weld through primer. This will all get painted when all the fab work's done, but at least for now, everything that is sandwiched between the metal will be protected. I've tried to do this in a lot of areas around the car, but you know, I've ran out of primer here and there, so I try to hit everything that I can. Got it all stitch welded all the way around. This piece here does not have to be completely sealed off because I'm going to have another firewall here at the rear seats, and that will be completely sealed. So I'm going to leave it stitched. I think it looks pretty nice. Now before I think about welding on the battery tray or getting this painted, I need to stitch the underside right where I put those two braces. That was the whole purpose of me putting it there, is so it could support the weight of the battery. So I'm gonna set the battery on top of it because that's probably one of the heaviest things I have right now, and go to the underside and just stitch weld up and down those rails, and this thing will be good to go. It'll be nice and strong and there won't be any rattles either. All right, so I got the underside all stitch welded to the bars that I put in. It's nice and solid now. I didn't want to bring you guys down there because I just put a brand new lens on this GoPro, so this should look better than probably the last 6 videos. All the other ones I've shot in sparks at it and got weld splatter, and I'm surprised I even made a clear picture. So now it's just a matter of wire wheeling and cleaning the top and the underside, and then just getting this thing covered in primer. Okay, so we got the quick change cover all primed. It's good to go. And I went ahead and cleaned up the battery mount. I don't know if you guys saw, it looked like AIDS. I had covered it with this like OSFO rust preventer, and I put a little too much on there. But anyways, it's cleaned up. I got the bottom of it with some weld through primer. So we're gonna find the center mark of this so we can get it exactly where we want it. And we're gonna get this battery mount tacked in here. All right, so as you guys saw, we got this thing all primed up. It's all protected from the rust. It'll probably be primer here for a little bit until we get the whole thing painted, but you can see how it all turned out. Not too bad. As you saw, the bead rolls aren't perfect. It's the first time I'd ever done it. It's acceptable, and the battery tray was able to hide all the flaws. So all in all, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I really didn't want to remake this piece. It wasn't worth it to me just to have that little section look good when you're not gonna see it anyways. So I put it all in, stitch welded around the whole thing like you saw. The underside is all in. I got it all primed as well, and it's all ready to go. We're all out of time on this video. We got the quick change cover done and the battery mounted. The next thing that we need to work on is more than likely gonna be this radiator. You guys will see it in the next video. It's an awesome unit, and we have a ton of modifications that we need to do to it. So stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe if you wanna see more, and I appreciate you watching this one. See you guys.